You're listening to episode 64 of The Legion of Reason, casting a critical eye on a sometimes less than critical world. This episode was recorded June 2nd, 2013. Hello once again from Calgary, Alberta. We have another guest with us this week. I've been looking to get Peter Boghossian on with us for some time now, and we have finally succeeded in getting him on the podcast following his talk at INR 3 in Kamloops to talk street epistemology and sci-fi. At INR 3, Peter outlined a positive approach to getting people to think critically about their beliefs. This is something that has been conspicuously missing from discourse on how to deal with believers, and his upcoming book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, is an evidence-based discussion Peter wrote to fill that gap. He's also a big sci-fi fan, and during that discussion I reveal yet another deep, dark secret about myself. But first, I'd like to pay tribute to a voice for humanism in Canada that went silent this past week. Dr. Henry Morgentaler tirelessly fought for women's reproductive rights. Morgentaler was a Polish Jew whose father was killed by the Gestapo, and the rest of his family was sent to Auschwitz, where he lost his mother. After the war, Henry emigrated to Canada and earned his medical degree from the Université de Montréal. And after having no one to refer women to obtain abortions, in the late 60s he gave up his practice to open his first abortion clinic. He continually violated Canada's draconian abortion law by not informing the Therapeutic Abortion Committee beforehand. The province of Quebec attempted to jail and prosecute him several times, finally giving up in 1976 after continually being acquitted. In fact, Quebec then refused outright to enforce Canada's abortion law with regard to those performed by qualified physicians and only going after the backstreet abortionists. Morgentaler tried several times to overturn Canada's abortion law in the Supreme Court, finally succeeding in a Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms challenge in 1988. In the majority decision, Chief Justice Brian Dixon wrote, "Forcing a woman, by threat of criminal sanction, to carry a fetus to term unless she meets certain criteria unrelated to her own priorities and aspirations is a profound interference with a woman's body and thus a violation of her security of the person." His legal battles were on top of the continual death threats, bombings of his clinic, and actual attempts on his person. In 1995, abortion was added to the Canada Health Act as an essential medical service. Despite this, several provinces continue to refuse to fund abortions. This is where Henry Morgentaler's most recent legal battles have been concentrated. He has also been recently active in opening abortion clinics in Canada's Arctic regions. Dr. Morgentaler was instrumental in the legalization of abortion services in this country, and while a polarizing figure, everyone owes him a debt of gratitude. The fight to make women's reproductive and bodily autonomy rights will, and must, continue without him, but it is difficult to underestimate his contributions to the movement. So if you need a reason to keep up the fight, Dr. Jen Gunter read a personal anecdote on her blog where Henry related his experiences on the horrors of a time when the only abortions available were of the backstreet type. "Oh, Jen," he said, taking off his glasses and rubbing his eyes, "it was horrible. You have no idea. Every night we would admit 2 or 3 from the emergency department. That's one hospital in one city, every night, 2 or 3. He continued. "They were septic, perforated bowels and bellies full of pus, and we couldn't do a damn thing but take out their mangled organs, give them penicillin, and hope for the best. You have to remember, this is before we had the fancy antibiotics that we have now, and we didn't have CT scans or ultrasounds to help us make a diagnosis. Every night, 2 or 3. Can you imagine?" He repeated himself to drive the point home. Appropriately done abortions by skilled providers have such a low complication rate, he knew that I had seen few complications from legal abortions, never mind a complication from a back alley procedure. And they were almost always alone, he added. Boyfriend or husband didn't know, or worse, didn't care. Often they were too ashamed to tell their families, but a few lucky ones had girlfriends with them. Well, thank goodness things have changed, but there's still work to be done. On that note, let's get on to the podcast. Everybody's here.
Okay, so I was going to say, is everyone from Canada?
Indeed. Well, I'm not original.
Alberta. Well, right now.
I'm a Californian, you know.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, it was creepy today.
Right back.
There was sorry, Twyla. There's a guy that we had at the after party thing for John Loftus, and it was creepy to how we were paralleled, our lives paralleled. Both of us were born in Los Angeles County. Both of us moved to Canada after a divorce with our mother, came up with our mothers. It was just really creepy. And we're both hiding from the IRS. So, what was that noise?
Sorry.
That was a lamp going sideways on me, but it's okay.
Oh, I'm not the only one. Yay!
Yeah.
Chaos at our houses tonight.
Tell me about it. I actually sort of did a half surprise sudden move thing. My landlord's doing repair work at my place and wanted me out, and basically I was told, like, yesterday.
Yeah,
So,
lovely.
yeah. So I'm sort of living in a pile of junk at my parents' place at the moment. Grand fun.
Cozy.
So, Peter, do you want to do science fiction first, or we want to do some...
I am game for anything.
As we get on science fiction, we can go on forever, you know.
I actually do know that I have to prevent myself from speaking. It's one of my passions. But I don't really. Usually, when I read critical thinking, atheism, my research for my book, and
Me too.
I only read nonfiction. And when to unwind, I watch just about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes of television, maybe if I'm lucky on the weekends, an hour every night, and it's all science fiction. So I've been doing that for, I don't know, 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife assures me it's not something to be proud of, but just a hobby.
You don't go to Trek conferences or anything?
No, I don't. I don't. I don't know. I just like watching it, and I really don't have anybody to talk to about it. It's such a geeky thing that no one.
Really?
Well,
You and Sam Mulvey should get together. I think he would probably enjoy that.
Yeah, TV, movies, science fiction, big fan. So, but yeah, we could talk about the book first, probably. That'd be probably.
Yeah, I think that would probably, then we can move into that. So you have a book coming out called The Manual for Creating Atheists. Unfortunately, that book isn't going to be out until November, but you can pre-order it at Amazon. Tell us a bit about this, how you started looking into trying to create more evangelical critical thinking kind of topic.
See, I don't really think I don't look at it as creating evangelical atheists. I look at it as educating people. And I was telling Mike, the head of CFI Canada, about the way that I conceptualize this is if we wanted to figure out some kind of accounting problem, you and I, Randy, and the first order of business is that we need to make sure that the other person understands basic math, or at least enough math to figure out the problem. That's a problem of education. So we have people in society who are unfortunately uneducated in basic rudiments of how to think clearly and critically about things, and that's had devastating consequences for people and communities, and in fact entire nation states. So the book is an attempt to address some of the problems that have come about as the result of the spread of the faith virus.
Cool.
Then you adhere to what's his name?
Not Dawkins.
No, not Dawkins. No. Darrell Ray.
Oh,
yeah. His analogy with a faith with a virus.
Yeah, he's written about it. Brody, Dawkins, many people have written about it. Certainly not. I absolutely positively did not coin the term or the analogy or make those links explicit. I do think, for the reasons that I articulated in my talk, that it's very helpful to view that way.
Well, tell us about your talk, actually. A lot of my listeners haven't been out, didn't make it to INR 3.
Well, I should ask you, what did you think about my talk?
Oh, I loved it. It may very well change the way I approach people. And certainly, if it not change it, at least add to it in terms of how I, for instance, bringing everything back to epistemology. How does anyone know what it is that they're believing in is true?
Right.
And I think that's a lot of red herrings that people will throw out at you when you're talking with a believer, whether it's religion or homeopathy. I mean, I found your talk to be something that actually applies in a much broader context.
Exactly.
This is critical thinking skills applied when speaking with anybody, talking about chiropractic, somebody who believes chiropractic works.
So we all know that the religion and faith are problems. That's not a newsflash.
Oh, gosh, no.
The question is, what's the roadmap? What do we do? What are the next steps we take? And part of that, it's a complicated problem It's to reinstitutionalize reason as a value. It's to get people to value rationality. But how do we empower people with the tools so that they can talk people out of their faith and into reason? And again, it's not just faith, like you said. It's all kinds of superstition and hokum and nonsense and woo-woo. So that there are tools in my talk. I talked about Chapter 4 of my book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. And in Chapter 4, it just goes over blunt, broad strategies. And I tried to tie that together by bringing in other elements of the book. But hopefully people would have some tools to talk people into reason and help people come to their own conclusions about what is a thoughtful and examined life and why that matters.
Yeah, it's kind of nice that, from our point of view, that ends up meaning that you're going to become an atheist, or at least an agnostic if you wants to, split hairs. When we're talking with John Loftus today, and that's essentially the thing with the one of the problems that faithful have with the outsider test for faith is that it seems to be designed with an atheist end view in mind, but that's just a conclusion that people can draw from applying the outsider test for faith. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, if I understood it correctly, I will say that I love that book. I think it's an incredibly important book, and I think that John's contributions have been really striking, particularly in the outsider test of faith. We had Skyped him in, and he spoke to my club, my new Atheism Class, and he has a position that I don't. I've never been a religious person. I'd never caught the faith virus. I've never been indoctrinated into any cult. So he has a perspective. He brings something to this that I simply can't. But to answer your question directly, that atheism is a conclusion that one comes to as the result of an unreliable epistemology. So if the way one comes to beliefs is not reliable or can't be relied upon, then the conclusions that spring from that process will be arbitrary or the result of some factors other than truth. So yeah, right. So the key is to help people develop reliable ways to think through problems, and you can facilitate that just by speaking to people. And I gave a couple of examples in my talk about, and my book is literally, A Manual for Creating Atheists is literally replete with, I put the conversations at the end of each chapter. So I guide people through intervention after intervention, and then exactly and you have the table of contents in the first chapter, right?
I actually don't. No, I didn't.
I'm so sorry. No. I apologize.
I heard the talk, so that's okay.
Okay. I apologize for that. So basically I guide people through. It's a handbook. It's really a guide, a manual for how to talk people into believing, into having reliable epistemologies and out of silliness and nonsense.
Yeah, and that's a very different approach from what I've seen almost everybody else take. Most of us in the atheist community have focused on the evidence.
Right.
And, memorized all that and presented it. So it's kind of an interesting approach to see you take a meta approach and focus on how we gain knowledge and not simply on the knowledge itself.
Yeah, the knowledge itself is a conclusion that we ought to hold tentatively. And I'm willing to jettison any of my beliefs. If there's, and I gave examples in my Freedom from Religion talk, putting women in burqas, no matter what the belief is, I'm willing to jettison that if I'm provided with sufficient evidence. The problem with many people, particularly in the early infection stage of the faith virus, I call it's from the trans-theoretical model without getting overly complicated. It's pre-contemplative. And I advocate not using evidence-based arguments when people are pre-contemplative. I just don't think there's sufficient evidence to warrant belief. Warrant the belief that people will change their epistemology when they're in that stage. It's very similar to, my wife is a physician and specializes in addiction medicine, and it's very, very similar to when someone first becomes incarcerated or goes to prison. If they do find religion, they tend to adhere to it fundamentally. Similarly, when people go through addiction programs, they tend to adhere to these treatment protocols very, very, very rigidly. And evidence isn't the right tool at that stage. I'm not saying it should be totally absent, but I found, and I root this in the literature in A Manual for Creating Atheists, that when someone is pre-contemplative, the best way to reach them is simply not through evidence.
And that's, we should stress, is a good point, that this book, the strategies for getting people to think for themselves, these aren't just pulled out of thin air. These are peer-reviewed studies that you're basing this on.
Everything is. The whole book is rooted in evidence and argument. I can't remember how many pages the bibliography is. It's the reference section is huge. And I think that may turn some people off, but it's essential to write that to show that this isn't, it's not theology. It's not made up. It's actually based upon something that's real and something that's demonstrable and something that the evidence points to. And it's also multidisciplinary. So I tried to make that as invisible as possible, but yet note that in the reference section so that if someone wanted more information about why I advocate one technique over another technique, voila, they can just go to the reference section and it's right there.
Yeah. I think that really is an important thing. This is one of the first things this is the first piece of work that I've ever seen that actually goes into the details. I mean, we've had episodes before with Phil Plate's Don't Be a Dick talk, that kind of thing, but really nothing on what you should do, right, as opposed to what you shouldn't do.
Yeah, and I think I'll throw a little curveball. I think that the people who are going to despise this book and what they perceive the mission of the book to be won't be evangelicals. I think it will be many from the atheist community.
Yeah.
It's my prediction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So who was that? Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering if maybe this couldn't be turned against as well. I wonder how many religious preachers would lap up this book and just say, okay, this is the approach they're going to take at us, so let's find effective means for dealing with that.
I'm really happy you said that. Initially, that was a fear of mine, and that fear was confirmed when I went to Amazon, and it was listed in, one of the sellers, I don't know all the categories, one of the sellers in Christian theology. I said, oh, man, that's not what I want. But if right, that's not the goal, isn't to arm people with the faith virus for ways to help prevent their own inoculation. So that was a concern of mine, but hopefully if somebody reads that book, they'll realize that they themselves, and I try to write it in such a way as to guide people who've also been infected by faith to be more reflective about what it is that they think they know or they're pretending to know, and to be more honest with themselves about it. But again, even if the other fear I had, frankly, was that people would teach that at seminaries. It's absolutely what you don't want. I had an experience. The folks from George Fox a couple of years ago, I don't know, a year or two ago, I don't remember, invited me to speak to their seminary students or students who were going to go out in the doctorate of ministry, and they were going to become evangelists. And I thought to myself, maybe I shouldn't do that but then I thought, really let light shine reason on this, and maybe I can help some of the people to not go and convince other people of some silliness. I don't know if I was effective. I didn't do a study on it. But yeah, it was a concern of mine initially, but it's no longer a concern of mine because I think that the truth of how to think, truth needs to be out there and how to think about problems reliably as well. So.
Well, not only that, but I'm thinking that what is really a defense against critical thinking, that they aren't already trying to do. I mean, they're already trying to avoid critical thinking. And worse, they're trying to do it in such a way as to make themselves think that they are critically appraising their own religions. That's
exactly right. What we just said is the latter is really the problem, is that it's like a Trojan horse, or they've masquerade. It's almost, I'm always struck, when at Iron Offshore, one of the things I was struck, by the way, I had the time of my life there. I had just had an unbelievable.
Yeah, it was fun, wasn't it?
I mean, I was just blown away on so many levels. But I was struck by the fact that nobody, and I mean nobody I met there, had to be the smartest guy in the room and the smartest woman in the room or know the most, or nobody was pretending to know anything. I mean, it was a very genuine, earnest, sincere group of people who recognized the problems that we face collectively, and they wanted to do something about it. And it was so nice for me, not even nice, it was just so, I don't know, authentic, or I can't quite articulate, to be in a community in which nobody was pretending to know anything.
What situations have you come across where people are pretending to know, or have you experienced that elsewhere?
The moment I wake up, pretty much. Oftentimes people don't raise their hand in class because they want to know the answer. It could be for any one of a number of reasons. They want you to know that they know, or they want, there's an attractive potential mate there. They want them to know they're brave. Who knows? But I found that oftentimes people don't say I don't know. And I've thought a lot about and actually looked into how do we create a value? How do we institutionalize the value of wonder and the value of saying, geez, I really don't know. I don't know.
Going to find out.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
The big thing is being wrong. Like, it doesn't matter to believe whether it's in a god or some kind of plant that you think is going to cure you of everything, like this oil of oregano. Everybody wants to be wrong. They want to be right. Is that a part of the egotism of trying to convince people that they know things and trying to look smart and put on this? Is it a fear of looking weak?
I'll throw that question. I have my own opinion about that, but I'll throw that question to Hazen and Randy. What do you think?
Personality flaws.
Because it's valued in society to not know something, as Peter was saying, and for some reason we're all supposed to be these perfect little beings. And what's wrong with being humble?
Good. No. That's the thing. That's the intellect speaking, and I'm going to admit today that I was talking to somebody about Kurzweil's stuff, and I didn't really fully understand it. The singularity is near, and I had an episode of exactly that. Great book. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you don't understand it because
I haven't read it.
Oh, well, that would be a reason. Yeah. But
I was getting a second hand, and it sort of turned me off of it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, my own take on that is that it's an attitudinal disposition, and I talked about that in my Intel talk, which is online about critical thinking. And it's a theme that's gone in some of my works, that we need to develop these appropriate attitudinal dispositions of trustfulness of reason and willingness to say I don't know, willingness to reconsider. And the American Philosophical Association released this thing called the Delphi Report that details those. And the attitudinal disposition to critical thinking is just essential. And if somebody says, I don't know, I think that we need to laud them for saying, I don't know, even if it's something that we think that they should know. Because it's better to say it's better to say I don't know than it is to pretend to know something you don't know.
Yeah, but in church you're taught that you're perfect as you are, so does everybody have to be perfect? Is that where it kind of stems from as well? Is that some kind of weird thinking?
I don't know. That's such a twisted line of reasoning. My brain is still processing it.
No, that's not uncommon for religious thinking, though. It sometimes is incredibly twisted.
Yeah, it's very convoluted. Like, every time I talk to a believer, my mouth is on the floor, and it's like, really? It's become to the point where you're speaking a different language.
Yeah, that's right. And that's exactly why we need these tools to combat instances of unreason. We need these tools. So, I mean, I don't know how much of a difference I can make, but if we can get not even the book, but even the techniques, I don't mean to make it sound like I'm selling the book. By the way, we went right to soft cover.
Yes, we are. We want to sell this book.
Well, we went right to soft cover. There's no hardcover for this book, so no one's being gouged on the price. So, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create people on the streets who, when they turn these opportunities from these engagements from pester to opportunities. So they're having a conversation with someone no matter where it is, and now they'll know exactly what to say. family members, someone proselytizing on the street, they'll know exactly what to say. And I run down all the arguments. I think it's in chapter 8. I run down all of the arguments. Look, there are only so many things that people can say. Here's what they say. Here are some responses to that. But the responses are given in a way so that it's not a debate, but it's an intervention. It's a way to help people to think more clearly and be more honest with themselves. And there are certain strategies that you can take in a conversation, and there's a massive corpus of literature on this that I've drawn from. There are strategies that you can take to make those communicative engagements more likely to bear the fruit that you want. And that is for people to recognize that they have ways of thinking through problems that are not reliable. And again, I said in the talk, one of the first shifts that you have to make is from faith as a virtue to faith as an epistemology. The moment people understand that faith is an epistemology, that's a game changer. I mean, that's a total game changer. Then the rest is just how to operationalize it.
So faith as a means to knowledge is what the religious often use.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get them to think about how that is a valid epistemology, or whether or not it's a valid epistemology, because of course it isn't. But
one of the problems is that people who are really smart, thoughtful people will say to themselves, nah, people don't really believe that. People don't really believe that you should pray for your child rather than calling 911. Actually, they do really believe that,
Yep.
and their kids die. So yeah, they do. But that is, it's really difficult. It's a switch that people have to make, particularly rational, thoughtful, intelligent people who have examined lives will over and over those things, and people don't really believe that. Actually, they do really believe that.
Yeah, they believe all sorts of things. I mean, they say the same thing with homeopathy. People would not. Well, Steve Jobs, he did not go to seek proper medical care, and could have or had a very high percentage success rate in curing what ailed him. Unfortunately, he trusted in something else. And how did he know that was going to work?
Thing about teaching people to rely on their own thoughts, basically. Faith is your own imagination. And when you're relying on your own imagination, I have the philosophy of don't believe everything you think, because you don't know. I'm humbled. I accept the fact that there's a heck of a lot I don't know. The more you find out, the more you learn, the more you don't know. I forget what that was called. But if you're taught from a young age to look things up, you're going to make stuff up. And then you make up stuff like homeopathy, you make stuff up. If people are because they think that science does the same thing, you just make as you go and then stumble along stuff. It's just a whole, your whole point, a way of thinking that's pretty crazy.
So we've got to make reason a value. So how do we make reason a value? How do we, I think I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times in the podcast, institutionalize. How do we make reason a value? One way that we make reason a value is that if we give enough people these tools, that there will be a tipping point at some point. Literally, you could give these tools to, and I'd love to start with 10,000 people. Give these tools to enough people and we can change the tide of unreason. We can literally help thousands and thousands of people, because the people we help can then go on themselves to become street epistemologists and help other people to develop more reliable ways to think through problems.
You'd think they teach how to think in school, but then you have other people who always thwart those efforts. And it becomes a cycle. It's very frustrating. And that's
why he wants to create a new cycle.
Yeah,
that's right. That's one of the goals of my book. One of the goals of my book is to literally change the tide of unreason. And I think this grassroots, ground level approach is a way to do that. I don't think it's the way to do that. Chapter 9 of my book, I list containment protocols, how we can stop the spread of faith. And I list a number of ways to do that. But the core of the whole book is about how to give people tools to literally stop the spread of faith. And I don't think that that's a pipe dream. I really, really don't. And not just from my own experiences, because we've seen things in the literature on exiting cults. I mean, there's some fascinating literature on how to do this that, for reasons I can't quite fathom, no one's put this together before.
Emotion is such a powerful force, though, in argumentation.
Absolutely.
Or decision-making. I mean, you cannot make decisions without emotion. I mean, the people that have had their emotive sensor or modules in their brain damaged end up being completely unable to make decisions in life. I mean, just deciding what kind of clothes to wear becomes an impossible task for them. But it's such an important – how do you get people away from that emotional attachment to their beliefs and towards an examining kind of process? All
right. That's a great question. Let's throw a little curveball at you. I know you like Star Trek. I like Star Trek, among other things. So we tend to think of this kind of disembodied rationality, this Spock-like being, and the most rational people are the people who've turned off their emotions. That's just a fictional narrative. I mean, that's a TV show. That's certainly, Plato talks about reason being the lead horse of the chariot, but desire being part. I mean, your emotions ought to factor in. If your emotions never factored into your decision making, you certainly wouldn't have kids. You wouldn't do a lot of things that lead to an incredibly fulfilling life. And so I don't think the idea is to discredit the role of the emotions, but it's to make the emotions slave to reason.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, but of course we should factor in our emotions and how we feel when we make decisions. But that has to be kept in check by reason. And that's the other reason that we need science. We need science because it's a check on our prejudices and biases.
Yeah, it goes to something that was discussed today at John Loftus's talk, that rationality is learned. Except for the heuristic way that we tend to think, using common sense, that kind of thing. But rigorous rationality is a learned process. It is not something that is inherent in our species.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And in The Believing Brain, Shermer actually talks about this and why people believe weird things to a lesser extent. We're just not wired for critical rationality. I mean, we're not. There are evolutionary mechanisms, these cognitive propensities that we have to hold certain beliefs that may not align with reality. And that's worse by the creation of institutions that propagate and spread unreliable epistemologies like churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, et cetera, et cetera. And so how do we – look, again, we're all on the same page. This is a problem. What I want to talk about is what to do about it. We've talked enough about this is a problem. We all know it's a problem. What are we going to do about it? That's why I was really struck by many of those talks. And too bad John Loftus didn't give a talk. I would have loved to have heard him. But one thing we can do about it is we can combat many instances of unreason. We can deliver literally tens of thousands of inoculations to people on a daily basis. How do we do that? Well, we give people the right tools so that when they go to the PTA, when they go to no matter where they go with their family members, they can engage people to help them realize that their faith-based beliefs are just they're not in line. Not only are they not in line with reality, but they're not in their best interest. They're not in the interest of their family and their friends and their communities. And holding these beliefs, one of the deliverables of the talk was that when you really focus on faith as an epistemology, people will make that switch. Do you remember when I said that?
Yes.
Yeah, so people will make that switch. They'll make that switch from the conversations will always start. I said this in my Easter Bunny talk as well. Jesus, the Easter Bunny, and other delusions, just say no. People will start with it is true, and there'll be no clear demarcation. All of a sudden, bam, it will go from it is true to it helps me. It's beneficial. It's comfortable. And we just need to bring the conversation back to, oh, really? Let's talk about the truth. We were just having a great conversation about whether or not it's true, and all of a sudden you started talking about the benefits. I'd like to talk about if it's true. But again, if as a result of this conversation, someone would tell you, well, hey, look, I know it's not true, but it makes me feel good. All right, well, that's great. Then it was explicitly acknowledged that faith is not an unreliable way to get to knowledge or to truth, and then we can have a conversation about the benefits.
Mm-hmm. And what else can give you that same kind of benefit?
Yeah, I'm happy.
That isn't faith-based.
I'm legitimately happy to have that discussion, but only after my conversation partner has said, hey, you know what? It's not reliable. And again, I want it to be explicitly acknowledged that is an unreliable process of reasoning.
When did faith become a virtue? Because, I think there's a lot of baggage that we carry from past generations that we don't even realize we have. I mean, I remember my eyes being opened when I read Dawkins, and I wasn't a believer. I was an atheist, but this whole thing where you can't question religion, and Dawkins said, well, why not? And then I thought, yeah, why not? This kind of subliminal baggage that we have that we don't even realize,
Absolutely.
And that we give credence to these things. Faith is one of those things, I think. Getting less so, but
unquestionably, it's getting less so. But it's worse in academia. In Chapter 8 of my book, I talk about why it is. How is it that the critique of an epistemology became immoral? So I give to use a $2 word, I give a genealogical account. I kind of trace like the history of why is it that when I try to help students have more reliable epistemologies, people go berserk about that, and it's almost always the left. So they're my target. I think I'm going to do another talk at Portland State University where I'm going to go after all my leftist colleagues. It's a funny alliance. You see that a little bit in Glenn Greenwald. It's a funny alliance between leftists and those of faith.
Well, just think about in the past, people that would readily question, and I seriously think some people come to the critical thinking process easier than others. Like there's more law books out there and such. Back then, you would have got killed for trying to go against the grain of all these people, and the majority would become the ones that are left, that are quiet and more submissive and go smart enough maybe to go along with it too. So
Right. And one of the defensive mechanisms of faith is that you must not question or challenge faith. And we're trying to, the Muslims in particular, have blasphemy laws in the U.S. and they want they want blasphemy laws in their own countries. They want them in other countries as well. Here's a way to conceptualize that. It's a defensive mechanism for the faith virus. Here's a way to conceptualize that. So we have freedom of speech in this country, talking from the United States, and that extends to Canada as well. And the most coveted right of speech is freedom of political expression. When we're told that we ought not to criticize Islam, many people use Islam, there's some great stuff on this. Many people use Islam as a political movement. And basically we're told that our First Amendment right to criticize those groups that are using Islam for political ends, it's a way to censor ourselves. So, among the defensive mechanisms of faith are blasphemy, you ought not to question it, and then even more pedestrian, simple things that individuals get, like, oh, it's the devil tempting you or something. Someone told me that I was the devil tempting them. Funny thing to say to somebody.
Well, that's something I wish was true, the power I would have.
If you were the devil? Yeah, if I were the devil, yeah. I wouldn't be grossing 40 a year and netting 30.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. Yeah, if I were the devil, I'd construct quite a cool life for myself.
You'll still, even if it's not Islam, if you're at work and if it's a predominant faith in the office, you'll get mistreated once they find out. And so there's incentive to just shut up and go along.
You see, okay, so I have to speak to that because I think it's important. If you shut up and go along with it, no one will respect you. If you really want to be respected, truly, and my dear friend Matt Thornton, on Twitter, he's alive and safe. My dear friend Matt Thornton was responsible for turning me on to this idea gradually. If you want people to respect you, the way to get respect is to be open and honest and sincere and direct and blunt and not pussyfoot around. So people should know exactly, and I have many, many Muslims who are repeat students, and they know exactly what I think of their faith, and I know exactly what I think. I mean, so there's a genuine reciprocity there, but that's how people respect you. People don't respect cowards.
I'm out there about the science. They'll know, like, if they bring something up. However, when it comes to the faith stuff, it's so much harder.
It is, but you don't have to buy into it.
I don't buy into it. I don't.
You fade it out. You don't what?
Yeah.
It's hard to come out against faith and be an atheist in a group that's basically believing that there's that war against religion out there. You get in your face, you're the bad guy, basically.
Right. And that's, you're absolutely right. And that's why, one, it's even more essential to do that. Think about it in terms of homosexuality. We know that the number.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's another problem. My coworker, she found out somebody she was talking to was gay and she dropped the phone. And then I asked her, like, don't you know any gay people? And she's like, yeah, but I don't want to work with them. These people, just the thinking.
Okay. So right there, we know. Here's what we know. We know that people are more likely to accept homosexuals if they actually know a homosexual. People, I would argue, I haven't seen any studies on this, but I would argue it's the exact same thing as with atheists. People are more likely to accept the atheist they'll meet in a few years if they know exactly what you think and why you think it.
You get treated like you're flawed and that you're going to be untrustworthy.
Right, and the way to deal with that... They won't
trust you anymore.
Right, the way to deal with that is through grace and dignity and compassion. The way to deal with that is to not cower and to be respectful but blunt.
And I think I hold my head high when it's not spoken. It's implied. It's quiet. And when they talk about atheists and how bad they are,
well, call them out on it. Say, well, what do you mean they're bad? But remember, they're atheists too. They're atheists in regard to some other god, to Zeus, Emperor Japan, Apollo, Thor.
That's an awesome argument. I love Thor. How dare you blaspheme my Thor?
Yeah. So when you have those engagements, here's something that may be a little heuristic or kind of a helpful tool for you when you engage these people. when I engage people of faith, I really do, unless there are certain except when I engage leftists who are not people of faith but defending people of faith, it's not the same. But when I engage people of faith, I really do view them as people who have been infected by a horrible contagion. They have been infected by something that has crippled their epistemology, and their rational life is in jeopardy. And I need to handle them in the same way of someone who's caught the Marburg virus. I need to handle them in the same way with the same care and dignity as somebody who's caught a heinous virus who's crippled them physically. They've just caught an epistemological contagion, and they have a severe epistemological pathology. And hanging out with other people who have that epistemological pathology will make the epistemological pathology worse. Sean Faircloth used an unbelievably cool expression when we were in the car on a hike. He called it an affinity ghetto. And I just fell in love with that expression. And the idea is that when you hang out with people who have the same kind of likes as you, it's a certain kind of – you get yourself in a rut and you overestimate the confidence value that you have in your own ideas. But when someone like you comes along, so there you are, and you're engaging these people, and you're having – they know who you are, and they know what you think, and they know why you think it, and you have a response, and you're dealing with them in a manner. That's the best way to help them. That's a way to make them less certain of what it is they believe, and to help them to stop pretending to know things they don't know.
It's a lot easier one-on-one, too, rather than at work where there's 5 others.
Yeah, it's a personality. You know, a lot of that is like I would thrive in that situation, but a lot of it is personality.
Come anytime. Help me. So then they start thinking whatever bad happens to you, you deserve it. So, well.
Well, okay, so let's take an example. So whatever bad happens to you, you deserve it. Okay, so what about
atheist?
So what about the child? Okay, so here's a good example of how to talk someone through this. So what about the child who's 6 months old who gets hit by a bus? What did they do to deserve that?
Well, I wasn't an atheist. In their minds, that's the child of a...
Right, but if the argument is that if something bad happens to you, you deserve it, well, there are examples of children who die all the time all over the world who certainly don't deserve it. Mm-hmm. Well, then you'd wait. How would you respond to that?
That's against them. They view you as a different person. It's that otherizing that makes them justify treating you differently than someone like them that they perceive like them. Okay,
so here we are. We're at the water cooler, and somebody says to you, bad things happen to you. You get what you deserve. Then you can fill in the rest. You don't love God enough. Your faith wasn't strong enough. You made a pact with the devil. Whatever it is whatever superstition, the specificity you can fill in. And then you would say, well, how do you explain the kids who die at early ages? Maybe a kid has cancer at a young age and dies. How would you explain that? But you need to wait. I do like the asking questions part. Like I will ask the questions rather than responding and try to turn it around. That usually helps me deal with the confrontation. I like that. Yeah, so you just wait and see what they say. And in that instance, they'll probably have to invoke something supernatural. Well, they had a past life. I hate that one. I didn't think Christians believed in past lives. So if you think that there's a truth of the matter, which I personally do, and I think that we can know that, then the question is, how can we help other people develop more reliable ways of knowing, right? Just by asking them some pretty straightforward questions. I like the ones that get mad at me for asking them questions. Tromp away. It's quite interesting. Well, that may be part of the process, right? That may be part of the process that they get. They feel frustration because they don't have answers. That may be part of something that they undergo, the mechanism of belief change. Mm-hmm. It's good to get the reaction, and then they go away and leave you alone. Even the guy in the office that's a real big believer in anti-medicine, I was taking, it's just ibuprofen, and he's like, that stuff will get in your brain. I'm like, good, my brain hurts. So he just has nothing to say. So that stuff I handle much more easily than the more antagonizing atheists are evil type. So I just have to learn to separate my emotion from it, because I immediately go to, oh my God, what's this going to get me into? And I freeze up. So that confidence, I guess, needs to be there, like with the medicine. Yeah, just look at them as people who are sick. They're not well. Okay.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm dead
That
serious.
might help.
I'm incredibly serious when I say that. They're not
They
well.
think I'm the one who's sick, though. There's something wrong with me. That's awesome, because then you can view them the way they view you.
They probably wouldn't view you as – I don't think that they view you as sick. I mean, again, I don't know your office. I don't know the context in which you're working.
Most people view atheists that there's something wrong with them, that they're missing something, that the God,
Right. So
the devil's got them.
You can personally help to change that reaction in people. I mean, you're really the perfect person for this book. I mean, you can truly make a difference, and you should start by – I mean, if I may give you unsolicited advice, this office situation you've described is absolutely perfect. You've been given a gift. Here you are. You're in an office situation with people who are delusional, and you can apply some tools, and with composure and grace, you can see if you can help these people out of their delusions, make them even a little less certain of what it is that they think they know. So it would be a wonderful challenge.
No, it is challenging. Absolutely. Thank you.
That's a project for you.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about it, and that helps. So,
Excuse me, with deference to John Loftus, project. Okay. He thought that was a funny way of pronouncing project. Project. So, anyway. You've also set up a whole program at Portland University for, what, is it just involving the new atheists, or is it atheism in general? Or secularism?
Set up some courses. There were some courses in critical thinking and science and pseudoscience, and I teach an atheism and a new atheism class at Portland State as well.
I wish we had that up here.
Well, I'll send you the syllabus. I'm going to rewrite it. I posted it on Shermer's Skeptic website. I'm going to rewrite that this summer. But yeah, it's a fun class, and kids seem to really, really like it. It fills it literally fills instantaneously. Just bam, filled.
So what's the demographics like in the class in terms of religion and or male-female ratio, that kind of thing?
Well, I can't ask anybody their religion, so I don't know. I can guess. I think it's about the atheism class was about, and I'm guessing, 60% male, 40% female. The new atheism class was about 50-50 male-female. I think I had definitely had some born-agains and some Muslims and some kind of Hindu. I mean, I definitely had people with very strong religious beliefs in both of those classes. And that's always good for me because it just makes the class more interesting. I don't want to sit around where everyone just nods their head. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's really good because then we can challenge and examine and explore in a very genuine way. And we're not just – I mean, it really is a fun class. Somebody posted some videos of those some little clips of those online on YouTube.
And so that's continuing and going on further.
Yeah, so I got my contract renewed for a year, so I'll be at Portland State for a year. I really doubt that I'll be there after that, but I'll be there for one more year. And there's new atheism is offered in the fall, and we do the new atheism class is a community partnership with the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Science and Reason. And I was just speaking to DJ. This class, the Science and Pseudoscience class, is done in partnership with the James Randi Educational Foundation. And so
that's cool. So
yeah, it's fantastic. So they provide us with some content, and we're either going to speak to DJ and or Randy via Skype, which is wonderful. The kids love it. They get to ask questions. We spoke to Guy P. Harrison, we used his book in the new atheism class. We spoke to Michael Shermer, who's just so gracious and fantastic. He's been one of my lifelong heroes. And so that's the other tool that I've been using that's fantastic. I've been using Skype to Skype in people. It's great. But the James Randi Educational Foundation has been just fantastic. And I loved really getting to know DJ, and I loved his talk as well. But the content they've provided us is great. We've watched Randy's videos. We talk about how to conduct it in the science and pseudoscience class. How do you make a test? How people can test ideas on their own. Here's a great example of that. My son came home the other day and he said, hey, there's an app that I have on my phone and only kids can hear it and adults can't hear it. I said, that's BS. I don't believe that. So we went over how to conduct a test, so we made a little test, and sure enough, he was right. I was wrong. And it was wonderful. The other thing that was great about that is there's such a thing as being too skeptical. How wonderful for him to see me say, I do this for a living. Wow, you know what? I was wrong. Like, that's the modeling behavior. That's the behavior that we want to model. not only to say, to bring it back to what we talked about in the first part of this podcast, not only to say I don't know, but hey, wow, I was wrong. That's great. I shed a false belief and I now have a true one, or one that's more likely to be true. How wonderful for me. How wonderful for my relationships. How wonderful for my community.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between skepticism and cynicism sometimes.
Yeah, and
easy to cross.
That's part of, well, that was that freedom from religion talk. That's part of the idea is, I think it's really important for somebody to say, what would it take for you to change your belief in something? And that's why I get requests to debate all the time. I don't debate until you tell me what are the win and lot, what are the conditions, what will it take for you to change. Look, I'll tell you exactly what it will take for me to change my belief on a given topic. You write a topic, and I'll tell you what it would take for me to change my belief. No problem.
I like that.
Okay.
If you're not doing that, I don't know what the point. I don't know again what.
Yeah, you're not. You're just preaching. You're not actually discussing.
I don't know if you saw the Scientology video on. I think it's Stephen Fishman. It's a wonderful little video. I think it's 7 parts wherein he's really thoroughly indoctrinated in Scientology and had the students watch, I think, the first 20 minutes of the first video, and they had to spot the empirical claim, which they did, and then they had to design a test. And basically he said you leave your body. You know, they believe that the Scientologists, their thetans trapped in bodies. They leave the body and you can go anywhere you want, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's a simple empirical claim. And so you could run to the library, get a book, put it in a bag, stick it somewhere, and have someone watch them the whole time, right? It's testable. When we use some of the stuff that the James Randi Educational Foundation, the JREF, has put on this. And you make a test. Now, let's say they say, hey, wow, you put Catcher in the Rye in this place, right? And, well, that's pretty impressive. It's not enough to sign up to be a Scientologist, but it's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. Then you can continue to ratchet up. You can make another test. And I always tell my students, if you do, and that's the other thing that struck me about INR4, nobody said people didn't have superpowers. Everybody said there's just not enough evidence to warrant it. But what would it take? Well, what would it take for me to believe? Here's what it would take. You pass the James Randi $1 Million Challenge, and I'll believe. You want me to believe you can speak to babies? You want me to believe you can speak to dead people? You want me to believe you can? Great. I'm not saying that that's impossible. You pass the James Randi $1 Million test, and I'm happy to believe it.
Yeah, I've kind of struggled with this question. I remember in one of your talks you put this out there. What would it take for you to change your belief? And in terms of the God question, I'm troubled about what would it take. I'm not sure.
It's just,
in terms of Jesus is one thing. If Jesus came back. I'd need DNA samples from the original Jesus and the new Jesus. Of course, that's not available. But that doesn't mean it's not testable in principle. But it's just that evidence would not be available ever.
Yet after that talk, Dawkins said to me, it would have to be, we talked about the movie Contact, and he said it would have to be something like a sequence in pi or something through reason. And I think that, again, in the way that I conceptualize it, I think that even asking yourself those questions is important because they create spaces of openness where we can become less dogmatic about our own beliefs. Mm-hmm. And the problem I see with so many people of faith is not only is it astonishingly arrogant, I think I'm going to have to stop. I'm going to have to unfollow William Lane Craig's Twitter feed. I just can't. I really can't take it.
You follow him?
I do. I follow him because it's important that I am open to the possibility, and I really am open to the possibility that Jesus Christ is the Son of God or that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse. And I really try to listen to the best available evidence and argument. But it's just gotten to a point where I just don't think I can take it anymore. Such monstrous pretending. Such epic, truly instances of pretending that boggle my mind about things that not even Victor Stengel, not even the brightest physicists have any clue of. And this guy is claiming with certainty things that are just, I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if it's damaging me cognitively at this point.
He's a type of person that believes what he thinks, so.
I think he's sincere. Yeah, I think he's sincere. I could be wrong about that. I know that people disagree. I don't know. I don't know what he really believes. He
seems sincere.
He seems sincere. He seems completely delusional.
Yeah.
John Loftus thinks he's sincere.
Yeah, John and I have spoken about that. I think he's sincere as well. I think he suffers from some severe pathogenomic delusions.
Yeah. Have you talked to anyone that you know has a disease like schizophrenia or something?
I don't understand the question. In what context?
Well, these people are so darn sure of themselves, but they're absolutely nuts. Actually make it all up. And they believe because they make it up. But like the schizophrenics, they're paranoid and they're delusional and they see things there and they hear things that don't. It's all like a really warped perception.
Yeah, Dennett and I talked about that, and I mentioned Pinker having said, and Dennett talks about this in Breaking the Spell, that there could be entire communities of people who are just pretending. So
they get together, birds of a feather.
Yeah, they're not even delusional. They're just all pretending, which is really a fascinating thought when you think about it.
That would be pretty unusual. Nobody's talked to each other. I mean, you were pretending too? What everybody's pretending?
Well,
it's kind of like,
hey.
Do you ever see Joe Schmo Show? Where it was a fake reality show, and except only one guy knew, or only one guy didn't know what was going on. He was the patsy. Everybody else was an actor.
Huh.
I was at summer camp, and everybody else was doing this peers, and of course I was like, I swear I was the only non-believer there, and I went along with it just not to stand out. Like, and I think everybody else did too. I could tell they were faking it, but everybody went along with it.
Pretending to know things you don't know is not a virtue. It's a problem.
It was awkward.
It's a serious problem. Yeah, and you could, again, that's an opportunity for you to help others stop pretending by acknowledging or saying, hey, look, the emperor has no clothes. This is nonsense.
When I was older and had this confidence, when the naturopath handed me those freaking mushrooms and stuck them in my hand, and I stood there. She had me close my hand. She had me put my feet together and stand straight still. I guess what she doesn't understand about short people is we have a low center of gravity and we don't sway when we stand like that. Most people do. They'll sway backwards or forwards. She says, like, well, if you move forward, it's good for you, or if you move backward, it's bad for you. And she's like, what do you feel? And I'm like, because I didn't know what to say. There's no way I was playing. Funny thing was it didn't work on me, I think, because I was short, and there was no way in heck. But again, that elicited a response from my there was only 3 other people in the class that, oh, it's because you don't believe and because you don't have faith and all this other stuff too. It honestly did not make me feel like swaying back or forth, and I didn't use any muscle control. Like, nothing seriously happened, so it was quite funny. But the rest of the class, again, was looking at me like there was something wrong with me. So it was just bizarre.
It's a common technique to ask people, it's a type of confirmation bias, to put their belief first. So they'll say, well, just pray about it. Well, if you just pray about it, you're asking someone to accept certain conditions. It's just a form of confirmation bias.
Yeah. Or it's an unconditional one where you accept it first and then examine it, which makes no sense.
So it seems like you had a great time at the conference.
Oh, I had a great time.
Yeah, I had a great time too.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a discussion in on sci-fi, not much.
Oh, you and I?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you watching now?
What am I watching now? Good question.
You watching Continuum?
No, actually, no. I've never actually watched that one.
It's good. One of the speakers, William B. Davis, was there.
Yes, William B. Davis. Yeah, he was there.
I loved his talk.
And yeah, it was. I've never known he was a skeptic, and it was really cool. I'm hoping to get him on the podcast at some point.
He's the theme. He's just such a sincere guy. Mr. Deedy and I had an opportunity to eat dinner with him and his wife, who's really just a firecracker, lovely woman from France, and speaks with a fun French accent. And he's just the most sincere guy. I have to say, it was a little weird for me to eat with somebody I've been watching on TV for so long. When he went up to the mic to ask me a question, I was like, wow, there's the smoking man. I'm watching. That's Alex from Continuum. I'm watching your show. So yeah, I liked his talk, and I think that I've been thinking more and more about climate change, global climate change lately, and I find it incredibly disturbing.
Yeah, I had a little discussion with Victor Stenger as well, and we were talking about alternative energy strategies, and really the only way to go is nuclear. Yep,
we had the same talk, and that's one of the dogmas of the left. GMOs. The right has their own dogmas. The left has their dogmas. And what we really need to do is we need to look at the evidence and the science behind this, and we need to shed the dogma and stop the dogma.
Well, and the fear.
And the fear.
I mean, there's this stigma. I mean, and it's not there for no reason. I mean, 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl.
Absolutely.
These things have happened, but there are technologies that are much safer with liquid thorium reactors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I just, that idea of just fighting the dogma of there are just certain means or there are certain beliefs or values that communities hold, and they become, it's the affinity ghetto again. Faircloth is absolutely right. When you hang out with people who have these values and these beliefs, who share these commonalities, then the consequence of that is you become increasingly certain in the beliefs that you hold. And you become increasingly certain and you discard contradictory evidence. Oh, it's anomalous, it's offensive, it doesn't make any sense, etc. So it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think it's just a way that the human psyche works that we have to push back. It's kind of like, drawing the curtains on the, ignore the man behind the curtain kind of thing. Yeah,
and I was talking to Aaron Rahr about this too. He was great. This is the first time I met him as well. That these micro interventions, these little interventions, we can look at this almost like a bit torrent, the torrent of ones and zeros, torrent of a cumulative aggregate effect of these micro-inoculations to bring people towards reason could have a profound effect. I'm hoping it'll have a profound effect.
Well, you'd hope, because it's going to hurt us if we don't. We're going to die as a species if we don't come around and start being more logical about things. Like the reactions to your solution for energy, nuclear, are you kidding me? I've tried to talk to people about nuclear energy, and wow, you just can't. The NDP group here, wow.
Yeah, it's like the Greens, same thing. It really is an education problem.
The media does not help either. It absolutely does not help. You got to be sensationalist. You got to scare people. Look at me. Buy this newspaper. Get this. I don't even.
Yeah, that's true. When a study comes out that shows something is bad, when something else comes out, the media picks up on this. I mean, it's like, GMOs are bad. It kills butterflies. This was when in the 90s, and the media, not a peep from them when several other studies came out showing that first study was completely false.
Exactly.
And so this breeds this the falsehood that stands out in people's minds, but there's no chance at correction, at least not from the media reporting on science.
There needs to be another source of better information out there than the ridiculous journalists that put these things. They're taught to do this sort of thing. And to get the other side, which is full of crap, like vaccine versus anti-vaccine. Barb Fisher, really? What background does she have to have an opinion on this? And chiropractors and everyone else that's not educated on the human body at all, but they get a big soundbite. Wonderful. So not only
I don't know if they're totally devoid of knowledge of the human body. I mean, they do know where the spine is, after all.
I don't know how the immune system works, which is why there was a law.
Don't.
Yeah.
I was just reading a website the other day that's on Calgary Chiropractic Association, and things that that I don't even know what they mean. Like they preserve nervous system integrity.
Oh, really?
Like what the heck does that mean?
Well, you crack the back, the energy flows good. There's your nervous system.
Or doctors only treat symptoms, and I'm like, really? Since when? It's unbelievable what they will say, and it's crapola. It's pure crapola.
But it's out there, and people believe it.
And then the one in response to people who think that chiropractic is unscientific, and it is. That just ask the millions of people that have benefited from chiropractic if it's unscientific. It's like anecdote, really?
That's another problem with the science training. We need to be teaching kids this from like grade 6 and on, the scientific method. Anecdote is not evidence. Your story does not trump an actual study that this is how they do it, and that's why it's not crap. And do that. Do the critical thinking that we're talking about tonight. But no.
Yeah, so are you watching any other good sci-fi or no?
Oh, I don't know, but I told you I had a deep, dark secret, didn't I?
Oh, boy, what is it?
I'm not a fan of Firefly.
And have you caught a lot of flack from that?
Got a bit.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's. I think it's not better than ordinary. The casting is wrong. I'm sorry. Twyla thinks that Reynolds is eye candy. That's fine.
I got that from. I had to test this because Tamara just dies over this guy, and I hadn't really noticed him before. I saw him when she got her picture taken with him. I see her with him, and I'm like, meh. And then I go on there and I find that one video. I'm like, oh, well, all right. Take his shirt off. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I just think he's badly cast.
Probably.
Boy, I've never heard of all the critiques of Fire. I've never heard that before.
What, does he badly cast? I just can't believe the character.
I love the movie. Serenity was fantastic.
Oh, I couldn't get into that either. Same reasons. I just felt it was weak storyline, and if you want to see a program that has awesome storyline, get a hold of Sherlock. Go on Netflix. It's the BBC production.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
Unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the guy who plays Khan?
Does he play Khan? Oh,
does he what?
He might, yeah.
Plays
the guy in the new Star Trek movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that him?
Yeah, he's Sherlock, and his sidekick.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to watch Sherlock. It's fucking brilliant. It really is. It's just out there. It's the best thing that's been on TV in a long time.
And as you said, the actor, he's a good actor.
Yeah, he is.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. That is so well cast. I couldn't have imagined a better Sherlock. Short of reviving Jeremy Brett.
Oh.
Well, he's a reason.
And Jeremy Brett wouldn't work in this case. Oh, just getting back to sci-fi, I'm just going to ask you what your favorite sci-fi television programs are, Peter.
Thank you so much for making that plural.
It's impossible to do just one. I mean, that's not possible.
So let's see. If we go way back, I loved Blake Seven. I love
Blake Seven too. Oh yes.
Yep.
British sci-fi.
Appreciated. Avon was one of my all-time favorite characters.
Yeah. He was this sneaky one, but
wonderful,
but really wonderfully played.
Almost a template for future characters. I loved a lot. I've watched. This is an embarrassing thing to say, almost, especially since it's being recorded. But I've seen every episode of Doctor Who since the very beginning, and I've never
seen a lot of the early ones.
Huh?
I've seen a lot of the early ones, not just so many of the.
Should watch them in order from the beginning.
Yeah, the black and white ones.
Yeah, I know I'm going to miss some shows, but I loved Farscape. I loved Farscape. I just thought John Crichton was one of the most engaging, and the whole love story, just a wonderful, wonderful story. But it was pre-Battlestar Galactica. I love Battlestar Galactica. Little show Charlie Jade that I liked quite a bit. Love The Next Generation for its time, the old Trek for its time. Like DS. I could just talk. I mean, I love them all. I mean, I don't know. But there are certainly shows that have stuck out. And I love Stargate Universe. I was devastated when that show got canceled. That was a blow to me. I got to tell you, I love that show.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I got to say, Star Trek, the original series, is my all-time favorite.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so filled. It's just a total game changer in terms of social and cultural outlook of the future. I mean, I think it single-handedly made some huge changes to that.
And
there's a Vietnam War going on.
No doubt about it. Rebooting the series was one of the best things that they ever did, because then they didn't have to stick to the integrity of the timeline and risk alienating fans. So that was really
that was smart.
A brilliant idea, and making really substantive changes. Like, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but with the
I haven't seen it yet, so I don't want to know about that.
If you haven't seen it, you're kidding me.
No, I'm waiting for when my wife and I want to see it together, and we haven't had a chance yet to do that.
Oh no, I'm talking about the first movie.
Oh, the first movie?
Yeah, how they the timeline.
Okay. Oh, okay. After the timeline change.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good one. Yeah. Awesome film. Yeah, my wife and I love that.
I still love that one more than this new one. So I'll be watching it over and over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen it. I don't know how many times now. Trying to think of the new Battlestar Galactica I really enjoyed.
Wonderful. That was phenomenally cast.
Yeah, and it was much more serious. Like the whole in terms of. It's not all fun and games like it was in the original series.
The political parallels were wonderful.
Yes, the politics involved, the fact that you have to abandon so many people to their deaths when they were first leaving with the Galactica. That's just heart-wrenching. I mean, knowing that this kid that the president is talking to is going to be dead in a couple hours. Must have been just a wrenching experience.
Did you watch the last Doctor, the last episode, the season finale?
No, I did not.
It was excellent. Yeah, I don't know. I've been a little disappointed with the last couple of seasons of Doctor Who. Are you watching anything like Defiance, or you watching any new sci-fi, or what?
Actually, no. I haven't been watching too much new sci-fi at all. I'm really big. I love Red Dwarf, by the way. That's
Red Dwarf was, that was a show that I used to have a couple glasses of wine to. There was just something about being alone in the universe. I just loved that show, and it was so well acted. Just for the goofiness and the silliness and I just
Smeghead.
Yeah, I just loved that show. I can understand why it never caught on in the U.S., but I found it to be incredibly relaxing. There must be something. It must be hard to do a sci-fi show in space. There are no sci-fi shows in space. I don't think there are any coming down the pike. People have. It must be something that's difficult to do those.
I think it's expensive to do a lot of the model building, and
I don't know though. I mean,
I don't know.
Again, I really don't know. I just all the special effects are supposedly so cheap now, and
yeah, I suppose that's true. Maybe they feel it's been too done, and
slide. So here's a theme for since we started talking about you could get me talking about. So I was going to put my kid to bed, but you started talking about sci-fi, and I'd be on here till midnight. But so many of these shows. A theme has been. Oh, and I wrote a few proposed TV shows, science fiction TV shows. So many that I think the themes to me when I watch these are, wow, the kind of cool premise, but what a disappointment! It was lacking. Sliders was like that. Sliders had a really cool premise that they just didn't. It just evolved into, I don't know, like this.
Yeah, the later shows, but the early shows were pretty good.
13-year-old boy silliness. It's just not. I mean, you could do so much cool stuff with parallel universes and traversing parallel worlds. And I've been seeing Adrian Paul in a bunch of stuff, the guy from Highlander. He's been in it. Saw him in 2 things recently. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What part did he play in Highlander?
He was the main guy, Connor
Oh, okay. He played the Christopher Lambert kind of.
Yeah.
The character, yeah.
Yeah, the show. I never saw this.
I didn't watch too much of the show. I remember seeing it, but I just don't remember too much about it.
It was good for its time, for its time. I never saw many people, like Richie, the sidekick. I never saw him in anything else. But sci-fi is very incestuous. A lot of people go from one show to the next. And Stargate, with the exception of Stargate Universe, Stargate was like that. Stargate Atlantis was like that. Could have been a really just much more engaging, thoughtful show. It really ended up being rather disappointing. But, I watched it. I never missed an episode, so it couldn't have been that terrible. But sci-fi is like a hobby to me, so...
Yeah, so for me it's the reading. So I like the hard science fiction, the Ring World kind of thing.
Larry Niven's wonderful.
Yeah, Niven is great. I read his latest book. I can't remember what it's called, Moon Game or something like that.
Yeah.
And
you ever read Hadelman? The Forever War is one of my favorite novels.
No, actually, I haven't.
Forever Peace, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful novel.
Niven and Purnell. There's the Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars trilogy, which I told you about in Kamloops. It's really, really good hard science fiction. How to terraform Mars and kind of thing.
I gotta say, the Sci-Fi Channel is such a disappointment. It is so disappointing on so many levels. Like, I cannot believe. And if somebody from Sci-Fi is listening to this right now, I have scripts that I will sell to you for like nothing to get them produced. There's just a dearth of thoughtful, low-budget sci-fi. We need to go back to
thoughtless, yeah.
Yeah, we need to go back to just the old Doctor Who and what made that. You don't need a lot of special effects, but you need
You need Daleks.
Well, you need to understand. I think that they misunderstand the audience. Like, a lot of people like sci-fi have these umbrella characteristics. They like to stay up late. They're kind of interested in philosophy. They're kind of thoughtful people. They're creative people. And I think a lot of that, they've worried about alienating their audience and dumbing it down. That's why Battlestar Galactica was such a nice. It was just so refreshing because it took on so many themes, really important themes about things that mattered. And I just watched the pilot of Defiance was pretty good. It presented a world that was very different from the worlds that are traditionally inhabited by sci-fi templates. But the show went downhill fast, very, very, very quickly from there. You talk about odd casting. Yeah, so the sci-fi has been and even the movies, the whole, you got to show the monster, they're trapped. I mean, come on. It's so disappointing to me. I just can't believe, it's almost like they literally go out of their way to take the worst possible, the dumbest possible scripts and make those. And I marvel at how they could actually make something so terrible.
It's funny about Hollywood. I mean, the shows seem to come in groups. I mean, if you've noticed this, there was a bunch of shows that were based on fairy tale stories.
Yeah, Grimm and yeah.
Yeah, then now there's a bunch of stories based on the White House being taken over in this is more in the cinema now.
Yeah.
There's been a bunch of where is that? Is there some kind of leak going on between studios and they're all trying to compete? They've got this one going. Let's make something, and I don't know. The originality is just such a thing to find.
I really do not know why, and I'm not just picking on the Sci-Fi Channel, although I have to say they're such a disappointment to me. I really don't know. Is it why do they? I mean, they must. Again, I don't know. This isn't my business. I think about sci-fi and I watch a lot of sci-fi way too much, but I just cannot believe that it is that difficult to find a script with so many people who have written sci-fi scripts, to find a thoughtful and engaging script that can be produced on a low budget. It literally is almost as if they find those shows that are targeted to the lowest common denominator and produce them. I don't know why they would. I don't know. I mean, do they never experiment with a show?
Well, I'm wondering if it's a profit margin issue because they can produce something very cheaply. They don't have to put much effort into it, but they get a return just for producing the thing and selling it or syndicating it or selling it to Sci-Fi Channel. And they don't care how long it runs. It runs how long it runs. They still get that large profit margin.
But why can't they make a movie? Why can't they just do the same thing with a more thoughtful film? Did you see Primer?
No.
You should see Primer. And the guy who made Primer has a new film out, but you really should see Primer. It's one of the most thoughtful films I've ever seen in my life. It's also one of the most complicated. And I would say that is at the other end of sci-fi in terms of intellectual depth and complexity. I watched that and I said, you've got to be kidding me. So I went online and I traced the time. I don't want to give it away, but it's about time travel. I had to trace the timelines for things. It's really, really an interesting, thoughtful show, but it was produced on nothing. It was the lowest budget. It wasn't Blair Witch low, but it had an incredibly low budget. And so I just marvel that more, and maybe they look. It's probably the case that somebody has sat down and said, hey, look, there just is not an audience for intelligent, thoughtful sci-fi, so we've got to make the dreck. We've got to make complete, to use your word, I like it, crapola. And I haven't heard that word since I was a kid. We've got to make complete crapola, and then come what may. So
yeah. But a lot of these specialty channels just go this way, and the History Channel. Where's the history in ancient aliens? Well, I suppose there's the word ancient, but
Yeah, I never watched the History Channel.
Yeah, they do occasionally have some good stuff on, but it's actually less than what you might think.
I think we need skeptics, atheists, humanists, activists. We need our own TV channel. I'm going to do some interventions where I talk people out of their faith, and the main problem to doing that is just legality issues and waivers and things like that. I just posted a video of one of my ex-students who helped talk Mormon missionaries out of their faith.
Yes.
But I think we need a response. We need to get together with the Dawkins Foundation and Shermer Skeptic and Randy and DJ's JREF. And we need either a little, and CFI Portland was thinking of doing this. I'm just so slammed all the time between my work, my family, and watching science fiction. I don't have much time else, but that was a joke. But have something in the paper that, something comes up, we just combat these instances of unreason through letters or what have you. Nothing, everybody's too busy, nothing ever came up, but I think it would be fantastic to have a show either that debunks or exposes. I don't know how many people would watch, that's the thing, but I bet you could put something together like that for not too much money.
Yeah, you don't have to put it on actual television, cable TV, but you could do this on streaming online TV.
I think there's more of a market there than people would think. Again, I don't really know, but yeah, you could make it streaming. But one of the things you said about INR3 is you got to know the speakers and you got to talk to people. And I think atheists just need to be more visible. They need to be more, that's why I had a couple of tweets about, what do atheists talk about? At breakfast, Dennett and I talked about diets and just told a story. It's almost as if people think, well, you're an atheist, the faithful have gone to great lengths to construct this narrative that we're all angry or that, we talk about, I have atheist friends over my house all the time. We talk about whatever we almost never talk about it. We just talk about whatever we talk about. So I think it would go a long way to have even this little thing that we did now, this podcast where we were just talking about science fiction. I think that the faithful have this weird idea that people who don't share their superstitions, I don't know what they think. They walk around with our finch cliffs or something clinched.
Yeah, that's the part about making ourselves more visible is that we dispel these kind of myths. I don't know necessarily that I'm the best one to best example,
but everybody makes a contribution. Like, there is no contribution so you make a contribution doing this. Everybody has a role to play in helping our society become more sane, more thoughtful, and more reasonable. And you play a role in that, and I play a role, and your guest, but we all play a role. We all need to do what it is that we can. I have 2 kids, and I need to make sure that before I go out, that the world has to be more sane and more rational. We have to increase the likelihood that our species will survive. We have some very serious problems that we're facing. And the way to respond to those challenges is not through praying, or it's through reason and evidence and science. And we need people to wake up. This is serious.
Yep.
This isn't a game. I'm not playing around. I'm playing a game. This is serious business.
Yeah, ramen to that.
Ramen, is that what you said?
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, my kid eats a lot of ramen. I'm going to have to tell him that.
Praise the FSM.
So
yeah, we should probably let you go to bed. Your wife's probably put your kids to bed.
Yeah, I think she
by now.
I can't remember what. I have some sci-fi show queued up. I can't remember.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go look on Netflix and see if I can find something tonight. I'm in the sci-fi mood.
I'm trying to see. We have Netflix. I'm trying to see what I just saw that I can recommend. I love Netflix, but its selection.
It kind of cycles and it's not that great.
They take stuff away. You go to watch it all of a sudden and it's gone.
I wanted to start Battlestar Galactica from the beginning, and I went back to it the other day and it was gone. I'm like, jeez.
Oh, really? Oh, that's if you haven't seen it yet, it's not sci-fi, and I rarely watch things out of genre, very rarely. But I loved The Shield.
Oh yeah, I know this.
Fantastic, and I was amazed. Well, I like fantasy too, so when I say sci-fi, that's a general term. A Game of Thrones is wonderful, and there's a little Netflix original that I recommend, House of Cards. Fantastic show.
I haven't seen Game of Thrones on the HBO production, but the books. No. That's kind of why I've been avoiding it, because I thought the books were terribly boring. Well, I bet the TV's. This is one of those situations where the television show is probably much better than the books.
Well, I'll withhold judgment on that until you see the show. So, but yeah,
I'll tell you. I'll let you know if I'm right. Okay. But I have a sneaky suspicion that the TV show is probably much better than the book.
Well, I have to say thanks for talking to me, and thanks for asking about a manual for creating atheists, and hopefully.
Yeah, and it will be out in November.
You can pre-order it now. What I'd love to do, I really love to revisit this conversation at some point when people have had a chance to practice the techniques. And really what I'd love is for people to post those conversations on YouTube so we can all learn from those and we can all develop these techniques and personalize them.
That sounds like a great idea, and we can come back to this and go over examples and, sort of archetypes or subtypes of the, in terms of what kind of person the street epistemologist is.
Yeah, and I do want to. It was good to meet you, and I want to thank you a lot for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you. I mean, this wouldn't happen. These things wouldn't happen without guests. I mean,
I rate things like this.
It's wonderful to have people on.
This is the most different thing I've heard yet from writers, or what do you call yourself anyway? Do you pin on a label? Atheist, skeptic, humanist?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I'm a dad, a father. I don't know. Atheism really isn't a part of my identity, as odd as that may sound. Not believing in Santa Claus isn't part of my identity either.
Atheism is more like what you're not. It's not theist.
Yeah.
And then where something like humanist or Unitarian or something like those lines, they more describe what you actually. So.
I wonder if that goes to this myth that atheists don't believe in anything.
Atheists don't believe it.
Because they identify atheists with just the atheism as opposed to what the person actually believes.
Yeah, that's right.
So that might be a bit of a problem for keeping that label, but I find the label to be very useful.
Yeah. Oh, the label atheist.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people do, and I've had a lot of conversations about that, and I have no opinion either way. I'm not in any position to tell anybody what should or should not be an identity for them. Mm-hmm. I have more pressing epistemological problems I'm trying to solve right now.
A critical thinker, then, I would say. Can you hear me?
I can. I would like to think I would like to think I'm a critical thinker. I do my best. I think we all do our best, and some people are born in really unfortunate circumstances. Some people are born in broken homes or with a husband or a spouse or a parent who has drug or alcohol problems. I've been learning a lot about that lately because of my wife's work. And many people, the vast majority of humanity, in fact, are epistemic victims. They're born in these communities of people who have bizarre superstitions and beliefs, and they grow up and they believe things. Their beliefs are just out of alignment with reality, and it's
almost like we're stuck in some sort of dark ages still. Like, why is this stuff so persistent? Why is it so hard to get out of these loops of believing without evidence?
Well, that's a good question. We talked a little bit about the defensive mechanisms of the faith virus. We talked a little bit about how there are institutions that prop up and propagate the faith virus, churches and mosques and such. And now we need to do something about it. We really need to stop and think, and then I think we've identified the problem, and I think we've collected ourselves, and now we need to act. And we need to act immediately to stop the spread of the faith virus. And this idea of a manual for creating atheists, arming people with the tools so that they can help others to embrace reason, I think it's the way to go. I think it is a potential game changer. At least I hope I hope it is.
And embracing reason, that speaks to me too. So it's not against something, it's for something.
That's absolutely right. Well, it was my pleasure speaking with everyone, and thank you again so much for having me on.
You've been listening to the Legion of Reason, coming to you from Calgary, Canada. You can contact the Legion by email, the_legion@legionofreason.com. To subscribe to the Legion of Reason podcast, visit our website at www.legionofreason.com or look for us on iTunes. Music was provided by our own Graham Hill and used with permission. Bye for now.